Shifting gears, though, talking about the Packers, I do want to talk about their maybe future quarterback, Jordan Love. So a
Jordan
lot of
Love's a baller.
so a
Jordan
lot
Love
of
is a baller.
so a lot of slow start for Jordan Love right out of the start of the season, right? Now, November 5th to December 3rd. He is 115 for 174. That's 66% completion percentage. 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 106.35 passer rating, and 4-1 during this stretch of games. In the stretch of games, too, he played the Rams, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Lions, and the Chiefs. So talking about Jordan Love, obviously he's picking up his heat. He's starting to find the stride in his step at the right time in the season. With who is left, the Giants, Bucks, Panthers, Vikings, and Bears, he is projected to close out at 10-6 with 4,060 yards, 61.3 completion percentage, 31 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 90.2 quarterback rating. Now, if obviously some people don't like comparisons all the time, and making comparisons sometimes isn't fair, but if we take a look at Aaron Rodgers' first full season in 2008, we have a 6-10 start, 4,038 yards, 63.6 completion percentage, 28 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a 93.9 rating. A lot of very similar statistical things going on with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, years apart, obviously, but the record for Jordan Love is significantly better, obviously making a playoff push at this time of the year. So he's a baller. We already heard it from you, but let's get a little bit more. What do we think?
Even during the broadcast, they had this video comparison of where they showed Brett Favre making a throw up on his toes and Aaron Rodgers making a throw up on his toes and Jordan Love. I mean, the dude hucked the ball up and the wide receiver caught it. I don't know if it was a great idea, but he made a play, and that's what playmakers do. They make plays. Now, I think Jordan Love is probably going to end up terrible just because the karma of the Packers has to retro back at some point. They don't get Favre, Rodgers, and then Jordan Love turning into a perennial All-Pro. It's just not fair. I don't think the NFL gods will allow it. But from what I've seen, I saw Jordan Love against the 49ers defense last offseason in the preseason. And I was just like, man, this kid can sling the rock. He's sat for a really long time. He has to have an excellent grasp of a LaFleur offense that's Shanahan in nature, Mike Shanahan in nature. So he's got all the tools. I believe in his skill guys. I know you don't believe in them as much. They got a young tight end. They got a two-headed beast at running back. You surround a young player like him with talent, and you see where he can take you. And the thing is they were smart with his contract. They offered him a 2-year extension, and so they didn't go the Giants route and offering Daniel Jones the bag. And now they have a little bit more time to figure it out. You surround them with a little more talent, and maybe something happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when it comes to the talent around him, whether someone believes in that talent or not, I think the one thing that can be said about that talent is young, right? I mean, young wide receiver core, young tight ends, the longest tenured vets when it comes to the weapons on the offense are your running backs. Yeah, two-headed beast. They're running back with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, two guys who could be starters on any team. But when it comes to those wide receivers and the tight ends, him leading them to potentially, again, what he's projected to be, if people win the games that they're supposed to win, which doesn't always happen, a potential 10-6 record, but also pushing for a spot in the playoffs. Whatever the record is, I think what the goal is getting in those playoffs, whether it's 10-6, 9-7, whatever it is, we're looking for something, right?
I think this is a case of a team that's a little ahead of schedule, and that's okay. Because you're not bad enough to contend for a top pick. You're maybe not good enough to go deep in the playoffs, but weird things happen in the playoffs every year. So you're a little bit ahead of a schedule. You get that playoff experience for your young quarterback, your young team, realistically, a really young team. And you just keep building. And the thing about it is winning the Super Bowl is nice. That's the goal of every team every year. But if you were to ask the Rams, who won a Super Bowl and now they've delved into mediocrity, if you were to ask an owner that, or just be the 49ers, Super Bowl appearance in the early 2010s, dominance for the later, like we've had since 2019. I think a lot of owners, I think a lot of fans would tell you, hey, you know what? I just want to be good every year. You want to win the Super Bowl, but you want to see your team win. You don't want to be a laughing stock. Nobody out there is happy to be a Carolina Panthers fan today.
No, that's true. And I think if we rewind a little bit and we talk about coaching and how important coaching is, number one thing with coaching, whether you think on the field it is mainly a coach's problem or it's a player's problem when something goes right or wrong, quarterbacks are the product a lot of the times from their coaches, right? Coaching, their development. And we can see it right now, right? Jordan Love can sit behind, and he sits behind Aaron Rodgers for a couple of years, and he learns the system. And now he's going out there, and obviously with some hiccups there in the beginning, he's starting to hit the stride. Not only that, we saw it with Patrick Mahomes, right? He gets to sit a year behind Alex Smith, who was a good quarterback, and then he gets to learn the Andy Reid system and then goes out there and he balls. Or you can throw your guys out there like Bryce Young, who apparently, when it comes to the Panthers staff, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, wanted him to be benched midway through the season for developmental reasons. That didn't happen. Or you have Kenny Pickett, who gets an awful offensive coordinator, which we'll talk about next. It all kind of depends on your coach, right? With a lot of the successful quarterbacks around the league, you're going to see good coaches standing behind them. Or if you see quarterbacks who are kind of mediocre in the beginning, but then they all of a sudden get over a hump, you're going to see a change in coaching that is going to allow that change and allow that getting over the hump. Now, shifting gears a little bit, still talking about quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett, someone I just mentioned. Man, throwing these together, looking at Kenny Pickett's statistical numbers are bad. Now, as much as I want to give him some leeway for Matt Canada being a bad offensive coordinator, these are pretty bad, man. I mean, they're 7-5, right? I think that's just the Steelers being Steelers, and somehow not getting a losing record is just something that they just can't do, apparently. Now, you tell me where you think bottom half of the league or top half of the league for Kenny Pickett. Where does he stand for each one of these stats? Completion percentage. Does he stand in the bottom half or the top half of the league?
Bottom.
26th. Passing yards.
Top.
Bottom. 2,070 yards, 24th. Touchdowns.
Bottom.
31st. 6 touchdowns. Bottom or top for interceptions?
Got to be top, right?
It's going to be the top. Only 4 picks this year. Obviously, 6 touchdowns, 4 picks is nothing to bat your eyes at and be like, wow, I'm so in love with that. First downs converted, top or bottom?
Passing or just the Steelers?
Passing.
Bottom. There's no way he's good at that.
26, 91 first down passes. And sacks taken, do you think top or bottom on this one here?
He's probably been sacked a ton. He's got to be in the top most sacked quarterbacks in the league. Or you're going to tell me he's not. He's got a good offensive line, and he still can't make it happen.
23 sacks, 22nd.
The guy is surrounded by so much talent. You have 2 young running backs. I think Najee Harris is kind of a bust as a first-round pick. You got an excellent young tight end. You got skill receivers all over the place. You got rid of a cancer, and what was his name?
The coordinator?
The wide receiver that they got rid of last year. Sent him to the Bears.
Oh, Chase Claypool.
Yeah, you got excellent offense. That's probably why they have such a good record. He is not elevating that team by any means. He's dragging that team down. And I think if you take any baseball has the wins above replacement stat. If you took any replacement level player, if you took Derek Carr, if you took Jimmy Garoppolo, and you put them on that Steelers team, they're probably 7-5 or even a little bit better. Um, Mike Tomlin, that man is a wizard. I don't know what deal he made with whoever he made it with, but the man just does not have losing seasons. So, and he hasn't had a good quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger. Now, Kenny Pickett wasn't a top 5 pick. I think you can move off of this guy fairly easy. Um, can you imagine the Steelers with a healthy Kirk Cousins next year?
Yeah, and I think just to amplify the talent around him, he's 10.3 yards per completion is where he's at, but when it comes to air yards per completion, he's at 3.2. So 3.2 air yards per completion is where he's sitting, but he's averaging a little bit higher than that when it comes to the actual completion itself. But again, that has everything to do with the people around him. So when you talk about guys like Deontay Johnson and you have a guy like Pat Fryermuth, and why am I forgetting young cat's name?
Pickens?
Who's Pickens, right?
Pickett,
So when you
Pickett to Pickens.
right, so when you have not very often,
No,
when you
not at all.
have
I have him on the fantasy team, not often at all.
so when you have guys who are that talented, people who a lot of people would want a lot of those guys on their team. As much as um, I love our tight end and Jake Ferguson, I wouldn't mind a Pat Fryermuth, right next to him. It's a very similar player, if not better, and he's right there. Very talented. And if Kirk Cousins gets talent level like that, and again, 22nd in the league when it comes to being sacked, 23 sacks this season for Kenny Pickett. He gets protection around him. I think we're looking at a very good Kirk Cousins and almost a Cush situation coming back from injury, which I would appreciate. I think you and I are both big Kirk Cousins fans, and we'd love to see him succeed.
My man, Kenny Pickett, he's just tapioca pudding. He's just like he's not throwing
Right.
a bunch of picks. He's not like there's a couple of really really awesome Justin Fields I'll call low lights because they were terrible plays. You don't see a ton of that stuff out of Kenny Pickett. He's just not doing anything. He's not moving the offense. He's not making anything happen. He's not playing inspired football. And the days of giving these guys 4 or 5 years is over. You know, there's a Bo Nix coming out of Oregon this year that's going to be a late first round pick, and you just recycle. That you you can't waste seasons in the NFL anymore when there's so much parity. There's so much
Right.
ability. My guy Jake Browning, Folsom High School, might get the Bengals in the playoffs this year because there's so much parity in the like Tom Brady said, maybe the football's not that great this year, but Pickens, not Pickens. Pickens is a baller.
Mm-hmm.
Pickett, uh, this may be his last season as a full-time starter in the NFL, and maybe he sits for a couple of seasons and develops a little bit more, and he has the Geno Smith resurgence, and everything's good. But um, there's definitely talent disparities between a couple of the young quarterbacks I know we're going to talk about. But I mean, what would Bryce Young look on the Steelers team with all that talent, as opposed to not having a wide receiver, not having a Christian McCaffrey at running back like the Panthers currently have? So when you have all the talent on the team and you're not making a difference, I think they're going to take the keys away from you pretty quickly.
I think something to remember too. I think the Geno Smith thing is interesting. I think something to remember when it comes to Geno Smith is he was talented coming out of college, genuinely talented. Arm talent was there. It's just not putting it all together with a not talented Jets team and getting punched in the goddamn jaw is probably not a great look for the team itself. Kenny Pickett is the guy that we probably thought he was. Not a great arm talent. You got baby hands. Not that great in terms of mobility. He's okay, but he's not amazing. Decision making's fine. I mean, he's coming out of Pitt. It's not like we're talking about a guy who's coming from a winning school or a school that's known for producing quarterbacks as of recent or with the history, anything like that. I mean, when it comes to he's bled, maybe even mediocre or worse. I mean, he's his 57 bad throws, right? Bad throws this season That puts him at 18.4% of his passes are bad throws. 18%. I'd rather not take a guy where 18% of his passes are bad.
Is it even a surprise at this point, though? I feel like when a young quarterback hits, um, it's more shocking nowadays than when they don't hit. You know,
Mm.
I think that when you look at Pickett, wow, that's frustrating. When you look at Pickett and you compare him to, I know we're going to talk about my guy later, but CJ Stroud, it's just what CJ Stroud is doing is absolutely incredible, and what Pickett is doing is probably